A single mother and her children reported poltergeist activity in their home for 2 years, with over 30 additional witnesses outside the family. Today we discuss the polarizing true story behind the film Conjuring 2 and one of the most well-documented hauntings of all time, the Enfield Poltergeist. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to the week of Halloween and another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the supernatural. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast and Halloween enthusiast, just broadly speaking, Trevor Collins, and joining me, hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
Very exciting times. Halloween, big month for us. People like the scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This episode, man, okay, I didn't realize this was going to be kind of a big one here.
It's a big boy.
Yeah, based on, was it the second Conjuring movie you said? Or
yeah, the second one, the one that takes place over in England.
Yeah, okay. This is going to be good then. This is going to be really good. Yeah, Halloween is upon us. Let us know in the comments what you dressed up as. We're filming this ahead of time. I doubt by now that Jackie has said yes to the outfit that I recommended that we do.
Okay, what is it?
Oh boy.
I was going to dress up in an all blue skin tight outfit, and I was going to have her dress up as a fox. And then when people would be like, what are you guys? I would curl up into a ball, and then she'd wrap around me, and then I'd be like the Firefox logo. She was like, absolutely not. No.
You're the ball, and she's the Firefox.
And so the whole night, I just probably saw myself going, wait. I got to find my fox.
Hold on, bear with me. It's Firefox logo.
Not about it. Not one
No?
bit. Mm-mm.
Okay, how about pass Internet Explorer by her? That might win her over. But I was with you with the skin tight blue suit. I've been thinking, and I've got no artistic acumen. I've got no time to go prepare this thing. But I've been reading, as you know, Fredo and Christian, been reading through the Fantastic Four series, the FF comics.
Ooh.
And I'm like, man, I'm thinking I might want to be Mr. Fantastic, Stretch himself, and then my fiance Barbara could be Susan Storm.
Ooh, that'd actually be really good.
I think you guys would totally pull that off. And I think that you should be him in stretched arm form. So you just have your dangly hands the whole time.
Dude, if you come in the blue suit, you can be my arms when I need to stretch. You know?
There you go.
Christian, you could be in a green suit, and then you could be my effects, you know, like or Barbara's shield.
Oh man, you guys would totally kill that. That'd be sick.
Yeah, I feel like that'd work. You know, I got some premature graying going on. I say premature because I'm young, right? Right? Everybody.
Yeah. We're not following the pieces.
Man, I'm so excited. This has been a 5-month wait in coming. Halloween, you know me. I celebrate basically year-round, mentally speaking. But yes, no, we wanted to go big with Halloween. As always, we love to dive into the true stories behind some of these horror movies. And honestly, we've been doing a lot of horror movies this month over on Patreon.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking Red Web Movie Club?
Ooh, I'm talking the Scare-a-thon.
Oh, yeah. It's been big all month long, but we are coming to the end and the peak of the season here. If you sign up right now, you get our entire Scare-a-thon Movie Club month. We've got Oddity, The Exorcist, Ginger Snaps, and The Descent. Those are great episodes. And that's just for the month of October, by the way.
Yeah.
And then last week, we had our Scary Movie Discord event as well, which was absolutely awesome. And so there's lots to come and lots to grab over on Patreon.
Yeah, if you sign up now, you get all of the backlog, every movie club we've already recorded and futures to come, Discord event. They call VODs, video on demand, basically just the recording of those events. But we also have store.redwebpod.com. We have some Halloween specific merch, which will be limited. That will go away on November 1st at midnight. But we have a bunch of other ghostly merch that's going to last year round. We have a refreshed Baby Hands and some of his friends. Polter Knife, named by Jillian, which I call him Ghost Boy, my favorite new little emblem we got. And we also have Pumpkid, which is a ghost with a little pumpkin on his head. The Red Web Films posters. We have shirts, mugs, pillows, blankets. We can do blankets now, which is really cool. Crew neck sweaters. And of course, a new Patreon benefit, which kind of dovetails with the store if you become an elite member or above. Every month, you're going to get a 15% discount code. So if you want to go support us on Patreon, we're going to give you a 15% discount in the store to say thank you.
Massive.
And we hope to continue opening up new tiers as time goes on. But with that, I do actually want to give some shout outs. I wanted to go big this week on the shout outs for the Patreon members, because again, it is our season. This is when we thrive. Our Phoenix Flames have never been hotter. And so some shout outs. Task Force members Maddie, Sly Elcor, DC, Goliath, Mr. Pirate, Bigfoot, the Bigfoot.
Okay, hold on now.
Yeah, seems a Patreon member. And then, of course, our Squonk members, we got G, Zarathustra, Alex Tuck, and Andy Schrock, to name a few. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And with that, Fredo, let me take you back in time, all the way over to London on August 31st, 1977. A woman named Peggy Hodgson heard strange noises coming from one of her children's rooms at around 9:30 p.m. that night. So Peggy was a single mother, and she lived with her 4 children in a small duplex at 284 Green Street in Enfield. This is a suburb in North London, England. So her children are Margaret, 13, and Janet, 11, whom most of this activity centered around, but of course she also had her 2 boys, Johnny, who was 10, and Billy, who was 7. And now, if you aren't aware, a duplex, just for the sake of this, I think it's worth having the backdrop. It's a one building split into 2 apartments, basically 2 houses that share one common wall. I think that will be important because of where we're headed, but we do have an image of this house. So Fredo, if you want to take a look at that, and Task Force, as always, images in the video version of the podcast, also on our social media. So yeah, Fredo, go ahead and take a look at the house. It's very close to the movie, and I know you've seen the movie at least a couple times now.
Oh, wow, it's so accurate.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'd hate to be the neighboring house.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they get involved, for sure.
God. Oh, God. Oh, yeah, man. This is very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
The second floor, the windows, and that blow open, and there was the nun character or something like that.
Wait, the nun I thought it was the Twisted Man, but they brought a lot of other characters into this.
I think there was
story.
a handful of characters in this one.
Yeah.
But I think the nun is like right at the end with all the am I remembering the movie correctly, with all the crosses in the bedroom and they're turning upside down? And,
Yeah.
Man, it's been a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, the nun was in the second one.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they teased it. Hello, tease.
I want to see that knobbly man that walked down the hallway. I think Billy sees that one, but yeah, so that's the house. Very quintessential English house.
Oh, yeah.
And interesting note, if you look this up on Google Maps, it is blurred out for privacy because I'm sure it is an active residence. Task Force of England, be respectful. Don't go banging on that door. But yeah, so this is the house we're talking about, and it is 9:30 p.m. that night. And everything I'm about to say all kind of takes place that night until eventually we open up what happens later.
I will say in this photo on the window, it says Jesus house.
Hold on, let me zoom in. Whoa, in this particular photo, I guess it does.
Yeah.
That's one way to cleanse the demons out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Peggy Hodgson, the mom, is thinking these sounds were just the girls playing after their bedtime, so of course she goes upstairs to tell them to go back to bed. However, when she opens the door, she's surprised to find them fearfully cowering in the corner. Janet and Margaret claimed that the dresser was moving on its own, causing the sounds that Peggy was hearing. They were also hearing knocking and banging on the walls, but they could not identify a specific area or a specific source for these noises, and it seemed to be coming from all around the room. Peggy then watched as the dresser once again moved on its own, and when she tried to push it back into its usual position, she found that she could not move it whatsoever. It just wouldn't budge. Immediately from this moment, the knocking and banging sounds seemed to spread throughout the entire house, which to me would be mortifying. Of course, you have the idea of maybe it's the neighbor pounding on the wall. I don't know which of the 2 bedrooms it is. I don't know if it was the one that shared the wall with the neighbor, but either way, the fact that it then suddenly cascaded throughout the whole home feels very cinematic and also very, very terrifying.
Yeah, hard to explain that one. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I will explain it. It's a line, a bunch of fishing line throughout the house. You know what I'm saying? And as you pull, it triggers different areas, which knock over different things. So
exactly, it's some sort of Rube Goldberg situation. Ferris Bueller, he's in the bed, but when the door opens, the baseball's thrown, the stereo goes on, and then the doll lifts up because the trophy's hanging from a string. But I also think, to your point, there's an apparatus of dozens of those birds that dip their beaks into water. They're knocking on the walls,
I mean, if people put lines throughout the house for like Ethernet, who's to say you can't put a fishing line with a bunch of little bells?
You got Billy in the next room tugging on the phone line in his wall, and it's causing all of that.
That's what I'm saying. Everything can be explained.
And will be. With a lot of gratuitous assumptions and fact stating. Now, of course, we're still in that night, and Peggy's thinking wisely, okay, we got to get our neighbors involved. Maybe they're hearing something. Maybe they're the source of this. I don't know, but I'm terrified and I want some answers. So Peggy then goes over to her neighbors, the Nottinghams, and she seeks help. They too claim to hear the noises. They come over, they hear it, but they also could not find where it was coming from. So as a group, they then wisely decide to contact the police. The police then show up at 1 a.m. that night. So they're up all night, terrified, sounds, things being thrown eventually we'll talk about. And while the police officers did reportedly see a chair move on its own, it was one of the things that the police kind of said, well, I don't know what we can do about this. This is outside of our corporeal jurisdiction.
Like, what are they going to do? You know what I'm saying? I'm sure the bullets in their guns aren't blessed by a pope or anything like that. You know what I mean? They ain't got no holy bullets. This isn't Constantine that you called up.
Right. So this is, way out of their purview, and they kind of leave. And so, God, I love the idea of them going, we got a guy. And Keanu Reeves, Constantine, walks through the door and starts blasting these ghosts with holy bullets. Speaking of, I've been very patient for Constantine 2, but that's another...
Oh, I'm very patiently waiting. I think Constantine was a very, slept on movie.
Mm-hmm. Now, the next day, marbles and Legos were seemingly thrown across the room on their own. These marbles reportedly did not roll once they hit the ground. And so the kids are reporting this, the mom is seeing this, especially the Legos, but these marbles would fly across the room and then hit the ground and just not move, as if like a magnet pulled them there. And other inanimate objects continued to move on their own throughout the house. I mean, dressers moving, chairs would upturn, things of that nature. And it's unclear when exactly other incidents in the home began happening, but other experiences include things like items going missing, disembodied voices in the house, heavy furniture and other objects moving across the room on their own. You have metal utensils that would inexplicably be bent. The mom would open the drawer and suddenly there'd just be a bunch of weirdly bent utensils, I guess. But they also saw things more than just hearing. They would see faces in the window, shadow people throughout the house, and sometimes it was claimed that the children were picked up by an unseen force, kind of floating in midair.
They're just being absolutely terrorized.
Truly!
And on top of that, things going missing, that's just annoying as hell. And, I'm thinking like things that are important to you. Mm-hmm. Imagine trying to put together a bowl of cereal and then all the spoons are bent. The remote for the TV's gone. It's just annoying.
Margaret, do you have your homework? No, Mrs. A ghost stole it. Viable excuse in this situation.
It would be, but ain't nobody ever gonna believe you.
True. Yeah, I need some evidence of the afterlife before you run that one by my desk. You just like turn a bunch of your classmates into paranormal investigators.
Oh, yeah.
So this is actually when paranormal investigators got involved, because according to the Society of Psychical Research, council members and people of the church were visiting the home, attempting to help the Hodgsons figure out what was going on and maybe find a solution. We'll talk a little bit more about that group in just a bit, but they report that the neighbor, Mrs. Nottingham, is the one who called on Peggy's behalf on September 4th. Now, since Peggy wasn't sure who to seek out for help, she contacted the Daily Mirror, a British tabloid newspaper, and this is part of why this case is so well documented. Not only did their story catch fire in their community and just raise a bunch of awareness, but now tabloids and newspapers are coming in, doing investigations, interviews, photography, all sorts of stuff. So there really are a lot of photos of the house, in the house, not so much of the paranormal, but the house itself was well documented.
Which is nice, and it's rare because it usually isn't. Sometimes it's just like, oh, okay, here's a blurry photo. But this one is honestly to the point where it's too much, because in the sense of like, it'd be really annoying for the family. I know they were seeking help, but like, I'm sure they got annoyed sometimes. And I'm sure the people that live there right now are probably annoyed that people just show up or take pictures outside their house and stuff.
Right. I'm sure it's an interesting balance between desperately wanting answers in this to end, but also having their privacy maybe violated, having their story blown up so much. We'll talk a little bit about that in the theories, because it does come out and try to answer maybe what's going on here. But yeah, for better or worse, this house was wildly documented, and there's a ton of photos that we're not going to share because it is just kind of photos of the rooms, photos of the house, not so much relevant to the haunting itself, but Task Force, if you're interested, you can easily see a plethora. We have a few relevant photos, though. In fact, speaking of photography, the photographer, Graham Morris, and a reporter, both from the Daily Mirror, visited on September 7th, 1977. So Morris said that he was hit by a flying Lego piece, and he then returned later to continue investigating the haunting, including taking many of the iconic pictures that we know today. He also told Metro, another British news source, quote, "I was convinced that something was happening in the house, and I was convinced that the children or no one was behind it. No one was doing it," end quote. So in his words, he fully believes what's happening, and he is saying none of the living people in the house are behind these. It's not a prank, it's not a misunderstanding, it's not fake, but he doesn't have answers.
Yeah, people just trying to help validate what the family's feeling. You gotta love it.
You do and you don't. Right? Because that can get out of hand quickly.
Yeah.
If you're just kind of blindly validating these things. But that's going to be a big part of what makes this case so polarizing, especially in the theories section. But that's kind of the initial haunting and how the case kind of initiated. We have the investigation. The Daily Mirror contacted the Society for Psychical Research, or SPR, for assistance. So at this point, we have multiple vectors reaching out to this group, and SPR is an English group dedicated to investigating paranormal claims and events, and has been around for quite some time, since 1882. So almost 100 years by this point has this group been around, trying to find evidence of the paranormal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's as official as you get, you know?
I guess so, yeah.
The group that's been around for that long has generations of knowledge, and I don't know. You got to take what you can get, because otherwise who else do you turn to?
There's also the possibility of generations of sunk cost, where
you're
just desperately looking for the one case that will make the past 100 years worth it. But I don't want to be too cynical too quickly out of the gate. I just want to, that is partly what comes to mind. But either way, it is interesting to have a group so dedicated to this niche thing. There's not a lot of this, at least in the 1970s. So SPR's research in the Enfield house lasted over a year, with about 180 visits and 25 overnight stays to see what was going on, take photos, document, interview, the whole shebang. The investigation was primarily done by members Guy Playfair and Maurice Gross. So while visiting the home, Playfair claimed that his usual investigation equipment, like tape recorders, things like that, all seemed to consistently malfunction. This is a sign of many hauntings, batteries being drained, lights flickering, or in this case, analog equipment just not working appropriately. Gross told The Telegraph that he witnessed toys flying across the house and that, quote, "When you picked them up, they were hot," which is relevant to poltergeist-type activity. "I was standing by the table in the kitchen and a t-shirt leapt off the table and flew into the other side of the room whilst I was standing by it," end quote. And that's really interesting to me. I've never really heard the idea that things that are interacted with by a poltergeist end up hot. We talk a lot about temperature drops and cold, but this is one of the first times I'm hearing about things getting hot.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That it would make it hot. Yeah, usually it's like, especially you see in the movies too, it's like, the temperature drops, you start seeing your breath.
Mm-hmm.
It's that cold. But touching things and making them hot, that's a new one,
Yeah.
But that's the thing. There's no official guidebook on this thing, so who's to say that's not what it is?
I know. I mean, does that validate it more? Does that make your interest kind of peak a little bit?
You can go either. Yeah, I really feel like you can go either way, right?
Yeah.
Where you just go, this is so against the norm that it's made up.
Mm-hmm.
Or you just go, actually, this is so in the opposite direction that maybe this is like an actual true sighting.
Yeah. Honestly, it makes me think, because in temperature drops, the idea there is that the entity, whatever it might be, the spirit, is drawing energy from something. And when you take energy away, Temperature is just a measure of energy in a sense, and it's just thermoradiation that we're feeling, and it comes out as hot and cold. But so when the temperature drops, it is drawing energy to manifest, is kind of the idea. So in this case, adding energy to something when it's thrown could be it injecting all the energy it's built up into a toy to throw it. Maybe that's why it's hot. You also have the idea of demons coming up later in this episode, and maybe that's why it's hot.
Yeah, we also talked about the theory of you having to build up a charge in order to do something as a spectral entity. So
yeah,
I could see that as well.
Like a kid in wool socks kind of shuffling along the carpet and then zapping their sister, you know? I didn't do that, but I'm sure someone did.
I feel like you might have some experience.
They call me the Thermo Shock. I'm a superhero. I got hot feet and zappy hands.
That's all you hear down the hallway as Trevor's parents. Thermo shock.
you hear the attack coming too. It's about 30 minutes of shuffling towards you.
Oh yeah. Big buildup.
Yeah, and I did it a lot too. So I left someone did it a lot too. So they left a spiritual energy behind. So in 100 years, someone's going to have that as a ghost. You know, you're going to hear.
Be annoying as hell. You're just seeing the spectral echo of some kid just dragging like a dog dragging his ass across the carpet.
Come on, that's what I'm looking for, man. That's what I need. That will make it more real to me. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Shopify. Are you selling a little bit of bracao or a lot of glug, 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 glug? Well, Shopify is here to help you do your thing no matter how you cha-ching. They send me sound effects. I like to do my own. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify is there to help you grow. Whether you are selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere with their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. Wherever and whatever you're selling, they've got you covered, making it easy. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to all the other leading commerce platforms, and they sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, their AI-powered all-star. I really enjoy Shopify. We have used them for our store in the past, and they were always so easy to use on the back end and design a website that kind of worked with what our aesthetic was and designed around our branding. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, and Shopify is a global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklyn, and to name just a few, but millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries have used them. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success at every step of the way, because businesses that grow with Shopify. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period today at shopify.com/redweb. It's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/redweb now to get your business, no matter what stage you're in, going strong. Shopify.com/redweb. So coming back to Maurice Grosse, he also told the Telegraph that he too heard these strange knocking and banging sounds, and that it could be heard all throughout the house. Strangely, he also reported hearing dogs barking in the house despite the family not owning any pets. I actually tried to look into see if the neighbors themselves had pets. Jillian was helping me out there. And we don't believe that they had pets either. You know, the ones sharing the wall with them or anybody nearby.
Right.
But we just don't know. But that's to the best of our knowledge. Grosse also saw furniture move on its own, so he is validating everything that has been seen so far. In fact, specifically, once a loud bang was heard in one of the bedrooms, and Morris, the photographer, claimed that he went in to check on it, and no one was in the room, but the metal bed, the metal framed bed, which I used to have one, very heavy stuff, had been fully knocked over. I believe it was also rotated almost a 90-degree angle, but knocked up onto its side, and we have a photograph of that. So he runs in, sees no one, and then calls people in to see it, and then takes this photo.
Ooh. Yeah, it's fully up on the side. I mean, it looks a little heavy, but not heavy enough where like a couple kids couldn't have shoved it up and over.
And I do want to take it back. It's not rotated 90 degrees at all. That's actually where that bed lies, and we'll see that in the next photo that we'll talk about eventually. But it does look like the part not against the wall, it's a single person bed, had been grabbed, lifted, and now it's hoisted. The side facing the wall is the one facing down.
Man, this bed does not look comfortable. Look at all those springs, like those little metal springs on the bottom. It's totally old school.
Yeah, it's at least noisy.
Yeah, it's very noisy. This is a very noisy bed. A bed of its time, along with all the posters on the wall, and they're all folded, like unfolded.
Yep.
And like put up. It's really funny, like especially like back then, where it's like, here's a poster, we folded it up 16 times. Go ahead and put it up on your wall. Like, what?
Yep.
All these lines and creases.
That's just a centerpiece from a magazine. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that. Again, I don't want to tease the image too early because we're about to talk about it. But the next image, both the sisters share a room. One has all these posters. The other, it's just stark empty.
Oh.
I don't know if that'll play into this at all, but it's something interesting to note here. But back to the case. On one other occasion, daughter Margaret claimed that she was stuck to the stairs because as she was coming down, something, she didn't know what, had grabbed her leg and it prevented her from moving. In fact, the adults then decided to help. Gross and another person tried to help her down the stairs, but again, she just simply wouldn't budge. Now, I don't know if this was a case of they couldn't budge her or they didn't want to forcibly move her, but either way, she seems steadfast, stuck to the stairs. Now, as the poltergeist events began to increase in severity, instead of toys being thrown across the room, it was now the girls themselves who seemed to be thrown. Investigators claim to have a photograph of this happening, like evidence, they call it, of Janet flying out of her bed. This is the image that I had been referring to. So go ahead and take a look at this one.
What? That's pretty gnarly. I mean...
Yeah, what are you seeing?
It looks like she's jumping off the bed. And she's terrified.
Yeah.
I will say it's not like a weird angle, right? The two other siblings are in the bed in the background. This is before it's flipped over. And then, yeah, it kind of just seems like she's jumping off of the bed and screaming. She's kind of in like a sitting position.
Yeah.
What would be even gnarlier if she was like upside down or some kind of like wild position where you would say to yourself, you know, wow, if this wasn't real, they really threw themselves into some hurt in order to get a cool shot.
Yeah, dude. Right. If you're being thrown across the room, odds are you're not going to land on your feet every time. And it looks like she might be poised for it. And there are a bunch of other photos of this happening to the tune of, I needed to make a GIF because my brain was extrapolating motion out of these. Now, I have a GIF that I've made. We'll post this online as well, but Fredo, I want you to see it. These are all taken at discretely different times. They're not taken in a row. So don't see these as all in one fluid motion. It's not like 4 shots were taken in quick succession because you see people move jarringly. Somebody's in the foreground and then suddenly they're not. But the point I'm trying to make is aligning these photos of all the different moments of her being thrown, it kind of says something to me. And I want you to see it before I draw my conclusion. So go ahead and take a look at that GIF. Let me know what you think, Fredo.
I mean... It looks like she's going for a clothesline off the top rope. You know what I'm saying? Like, and in one shot, there's like there's a person there.
Yeah.
So did he like dive out of the way? Because he's like there and then not there. There isn't like a gradual. You know, obviously this isn't meant to be like a gradual shot for shot, but
it just means to me that someone was there during one of these events. Again, these weren't all together. These were just different. I'm being thrown across the room photographs put together. Because they're from different spots. And when you put them all together, it shows a clear story to me of somebody jumping off the bed.
Yeah, I mean, you could see her feet on the bed in a launch position. So I totally agree that it looks like she's kind of launching herself off the bed.
Yeah, and the fact that there's an adult there then makes me go, why aren't you just telling it? It starts to cast so much doubt on everything said thus far.
Really does.
And that's what makes this case so polarizing because yes, it is heavily documented. Yes, it has become famous for what people have experienced. And there's a lot of things on tape. There's some audio clips we're going to talk about in just a moment that are so compelling, but then you have elements like this. And so is it a conflation? Are there fake elements mixed with real things? Is it all fake? Is it all real? It starts to get a little hairy.
It definitely does get a little hairy. This looks like a kid launching himself.
Yeah, and we'll get way into that during the theory, talking about, is Janet involved in some way? Does she have motivation, or is there other things happening? Because there's a lot that's happened in her life that I think could play into the story here. But before we get there, I do want to finish the kind of investigation. So like I said, the poltergeist events began increasing in severity, and as the months went by, things only seemed to get worse. In December 1977, Janet began speaking strange sounds while whistling and barking, seemingly like a dog, and later she sometimes spoke in a low, raspy voice, as though she were possessed. Even with her mouth taped, she was able to continue speaking this way in this low, growly voice. I do have 2 YouTube clips with timestamps that I want us to listen to, and I'll share the first one right now.
All right, me listen.
These teenage sisters believe they're haunted by a poltergeist.
I was going to ask the same question as I asked earlier. How many voices are there?
600.
600 the voices.
I know the joke.
Oh, okay.
How many really are there, Margaret?
I think so far we've had 10
Right.
sensible voices. But the rest of the names are absolute rubbish.
Wow. One sister is kind of like, yeah, you can see she's a little bit, seems like she's possessed. She's got a deep voice, but her mouth is open though.
Mm-hmm.
Mouth is open, so I could see her like going. I mean, yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
Kind of like grinning your teeth a little bit, and then making a deeper voice.
Yeah.
Kind of like priming your mouth to be able to do so. So like I see that. And then they're just sitting next to each other on this big couch. And then the other sister's like, yeah, it's a bunch of voices. It is deep, but it just sounds like you can take it as like a young girl just having, making a growly voice.
Right.
It is growly though.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that was the most shocking for people at this time. They hadn't heard this before, they hadn't seen this before, and honestly, they didn't have the collective knowledge of everything that we're talking about right now. With hindsight, some of them are just hearing the audio for the first time, which on its own is very shocking if you're not familiar with this kind of stuff. And so I think that's part of what helped really spur this case on. Now, in hindsight, you can easily say, for sure, this is a young girl making a very growly voice. I think we can all kind of drop into something very Christian Bale Batman.
Yeah.
I'm just astounded she didn't lose her voice.
I'm just astounded that she was able to keep it up so well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very consistent.
Yeah. But with that, I have one more audio clip that I want to play. This one is what's interesting. We'll talk more about it, but it refers to the entity possessing her is answering a question about how they died.
Oh, okay. Hold on. All right. You listen to it right now.
Whether you remember what happened to you when you died, just before you died and just after you died.
Days before I died, I went blind. Then I had an hemorrhage, and I fell asleep, and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs.
Ooh, okay. Real voice recordings of someone named Bill.
Mm-hmm.
This more so sounds like an actual real old man.
Yeah, dude, it really does.
It really does. Granted, it's just audio.
Just audio.
It's just the audio.
Maybe there was a man sitting in the room.
But there's a significant change in realism compared to the video of like one of the sisters kind of talking in a deeper voice. Like this is an old man.
Right. And there's details here.
Yeah, I would be absolutely baffled if this is one of the girls like making up a voice, because this is pretty spot on.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some details about like their death and how they said went blind, had like an aneurysm or something like that, and fell asleep in their chair.
Yeah. So I'll give you the full quote for anybody struggling to hear the whole thing. So, quote, "Just before I died, I went blind, and then I had a hemorrhage and fell asleep, and I died in the chair in the corner downstairs."
Damn.
So this was in fact Janet quoting something, speaking through her. And this is one of the cornerstones to people believing this case. Again, we've cast our doubts on a lot of things thus far. And as you heard, this was the voice that she used and claimed to be a man named Bill, who did in fact die in the Enfield house. This is, again, what's most compelling and interesting here is that a man named Bill Wilkins had indeed died this exact way in the house, as confirmed by his son, according to BBC. It's unclear how Janet would have known this, but again, casting a little bit of doubt, if she had, maybe this is where the story came from. But if you kind of remove that doubt of her having this story seeded to her, it is very weird that she would have known these things outside of her normal knowledge, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's detail here. The voice sounds very convincing.
What stood out to me too was that the accent wasn't super prevalent until she says hemorrhage or emerage, as this particular area of the London accent would kind of say. So it became clear to me that she is, in one of rare instances, we have a localized ghost. We always joke about ghosts speaking English for American film crews that travel the world.
Right.
Like, where are these Spanish-speaking ghosts when you're in Spain? Where are these like accented ghosts when you're in London? And now we kind of have that happening. And it sounds like she does affect more of Bill's accent, is how it is reported. But she herself does have a similar accent. So I'm not exactly sure there, but that's kind of part of the story.
I could see why everything kind of relies heavily on this clip. This is a good one.
Yeah, 100%. Now, as you know, we're in the Conjuring universe. We've talked about Ed and Lorraine Warren many times to great detail in previous episodes. So I'm not going to kind of dive into that too hard here. But also I don't need to, because this case is very light for them. They visited the Enfield house. They believed it to be a legitimate haunting, but they only investigated for one day and then never returned to the house. In fact, I'm going to quote Brian Dunning from Skeptoid, because this is what he had to say. Quote, "They interviewed the family while on the telephone to the United States, claiming that it was a live broadcast. Lorraine held a sort of seance. Ed Warren tried to persuade Playfair that money could be made from this case by writing books and selling movie rights, and then the Warrens left." End quote. So they didn't do a whole lot of investigation, regardless of some of the money-making cynicism here that could be real or not, I don't know. But there's been a lot of eyebrow raising around the Warrens looking back over their cases. And in this case, they were barely involved, and then off they went.
Yeah, I mean, they were famous, and but they definitely profited off of that. And you got to think, like, is it because you took advantage of people? But yeah, it's interesting how they're in and out. And then you cut to something like the movie. Obviously, it's a movie, so they change a bunch of things, and they're like a huge part of that.
Yeah. Now that's kind of the conclusion to the investigation. Unfortunately, after all these years, not many direct answers were made. Despite having 30 witnesses of the Enfield Poltergeist activity across these 2 years, many believe, as we've kind of heavily indicated, that this case is a hoax. There are even other members of the SPR, such as Anita Gregory, who critiqued Playfair and Gregory's dedication to the supposed haunting. So Gregory himself believes that perhaps these events started as paranormal, and then once the girls saw how much attention that they could get, maybe this is when they began faking it. So he's saying that maybe, okay, there was a foundation of true paranormal here, but then that got clouded by the girls escalating with fake things beyond this. We come back to the GIF, and honestly, this is where I wanted you to react to it, but I was too eager to get to it. The girls could have been jumping off the bed and pretending to be manipulated by a ghost. And I think the GIF I put together, again, while not in a 4 shots in 5 seconds kind of thing, it tells the story of the motion that she makes from the bed to the air.
It does.
And it shows enough to me to make me think this part is definitely fake. That's how I feel here.
I completely agree. That's the thing about having something so well documented, It's, you can kind of like point out the dull details and stop and really analyze.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here. And it's just like seeing the feet on the bed in a launch position. I mean, kids naturally love attention. Most, I would say, love attention. And then when you have siblings, and there's a lot of times you often see kind of like a battle for that attention, or FOMO for attention between siblings. And so
yeah,
I could totally see, people coming in and interviewing them, and them being a main focus, and them just kind of keep playing, imaginative like narratives and stuff like that.
Oh, for sure. And we'll talk more about the family too, but there's a lot of things that go into the hoax column here. Of course, we can't address all of the evidence. That's kind of how we work when we do our own paranormal investigations, is we try to debunk everything that is reasonably debunkable, and everything else, that's where interest and intrigue comes to play. That's where my mind lives, is in that sliver of reality where you can't debunk it, but you don't have the answers, and you go, what if? That's what fascinates me about the paranormal. But coming back to the hoax theory, Janet was caught using a tape recorder sometime after investigations had started. She claimed that she was testing the SPR researchers. I don't know exactly what that means, but the fact that she was playing with the recording devices seems to be suspect. But then, within this realm, it was noted, as much as you may or may not believe the adults in the room at this point, that when she was speaking as Bill, when Bill was speaking through her, a lot of people were saying that her lips were not actually moving. And we kind of saw it in that video clip. Her lips weren't moving as much as you'd think, but they were moving slightly. So to me, it feels a little bit like a ventriloquist. She was still able to vocalize and articulate despite having minimal mouth movements. So it's impressive, but I don't think it, disarms the hoax theory just yet.
Impressive, but like doable.
Yeah.
Interesting though, because it's like, okay, you have a kid doing ventriloquism.
Yeah.
Like that's some kind of dedication there,
Right.
It's not something that's common, but at the same time, they could do it. They could be taught to do it, or they could just naturally fall into it. I mean, I have tried to do that. You know what I mean? When I was a kid.
So not only was she kind of caught playing with the tape recorder, whatever that might mean, but more damning, she and her siblings were also caught bending spoons. But again, they claim that they wanted to test the investigators to see if they could tell the difference. Could you tell the difference between a spectrally bent spoon and these spoons that I'm bending? See, we're testing them. We're not making false evidence.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, believers say that they saw spoons and forks bending on their own, and that gave them the idea to continue doing it themselves. But yeah, this is not a good look right here.
I also feel like everyone there is like wants to believe very badly.
I think so. But again, coming back to Gross and Playfair, they kind of both believe that it's possible some of the events were real, but others were faked. And it creates this really gnarly environment where we're kind of boy who cries wolf, but with everything. Janet herself, now an adult, told Telegraph in 2017 that she and her siblings, yes, did fake a few things, but only faked around 2% of the paranormal activity that actually happened in the house. I had to do some digging because I was like, I know the movie's out. When did that movie happen? Because it's worth mentioning, right? The movie had only come out just 1 year prior, June 2016. So there's a financial incentive to not disarm this movie out of its interest, but also maybe she has contractual obligations to not poo-poo her own experience when a film had just released about it, right?
Yeah, you want to kind of like take advantage of it, and you also don't want repercussions of, I don't know, or backlash.
Yeah.
It's a weird position to be in.
It's just part of the fuel for the hoax theory fire, right? But then some people say, well, if you faked so much of this poltergeist activity, right? Again, on the other side of the aisle, how were you able to convince so many grown adults of this behavior if you faked all of this? That's where, again, I think you might be onto something where the adults in the room kind of wanted to believe it, and so maybe they looked the other way, or
I feel like
it gets wild.
Yeah. I mean, if this is your, especially, if this is like your job or you're reporting on it, and it's printing papers, you kind of, you kind of give it some leeway there.
Yeah, you might, you might want to come in and be like, listen, Society of Psychical Research, we want to continue to keep our veracity and our authenticity. We're going to say this one is not haunted. Sir, you've reached the cover of dozens of papers across the nation. Oh, well, now you're in this awkward, weird place where you're like, do we continue to egg it along? Does that give us funding? I don't know that world at all.
Right.
But I can see it becoming very complex for somebody who doesn't, I hate to say this, have full integrity.
Yeah, I mean, money motivates people.
Yeah.
Money changes people. Not to say that that's the situation here, but I mean, you gotta,
But those elements are in play.
Yeah, you can't not talk about it.
Yeah. But this is where I kind of want to go back into the family elements of this. What then, if this is a hoax, why? Yes, they're kids. Yes, they want attention, but is there something deeper here? And this is where I want to refer to Deborah Hyde's article in The Guardian. Now, the backdrop for her thoughts here is that the family had gone through a rough divorce, and Hyde herself argued that the children, especially the daughters being older than the boys, may have felt abandoned by their father and gotten more attention, of course, from Gross and Playfair. And because of this, it might have, whether it was intentional or subconscious, egged them on and egged them to do more so they can continue to keep these figures in the house, these male figures in the house. But again, this is Deborah Hyde's theory, and I think that there are elements of this that could be completely viable. You know, I'm not a child psychologist, but it does make sense in my pea brain. You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. A broken household affects the children.
Yeah.
I think that's proven. I think that's very hard to argue that that's what mostly happens in that situation. And that's also a reason why a lot of parents stay together longer than they should or want to, you know, when they have children. Because, you know, the separation of two parents, I mean, that's very emotional for adults and hard to handle for adults. Imagine children where it's like, okay, well, now I go to this different place for mom or in this different place for dad. And, you know, I go back and forth. And that's just in a kosher separation, you know?
Yeah. Imagine you don't get to see the father ever again.
Yeah, exactly. Or if there's visitation rights or whatnot, and then it just gets weird. And then you start getting, you know, spouses who have new significant others. And yeah, so it affects the kids for sure.
And they don't know what's really happening. They know that this role model, this figure, this adult parental guidance is now gone. And so, again, it gets complex from there, but making it very simple, Deborah Hyde is kind of saying that this was the motivator behind the attention seeking. And I can totally see that being a case. Now, what's interesting too, and looking back at these photos, just as an aside, I mentioned not being aware if these were sharing walls or not, but I can confirm that these walls between the house we're talking about and the neighbors are in fact shared in the daughter's room. And you can tell that when you look at the photos, there's an indent or kind of like an extrusion of the wall. That's where the chimney is running interior up to the roof. And the chimney is shared by both sides. It's on that shared wall. And so all that is to say is the daughters are on the shared wall on the second floor at the front of the house. Again, nothing in our research indicates the neighbors being the one to knock. The point I want to make is that with a shared wall, noises can be inadvertently transferred, and maybe those could be the knocks, even if the neighbors come over and hear it themselves. You know, old pipes can clatter around, bed frames can move and hit the wall and maybe not be acknowledged. Things like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. You just never know the neighbor's bumping into something too. Like,
yeah, dude.
You got walls connecting like that.
Listen, these neighbors, the Nottinghams, they could have been ripped and shredded. Okay, they could have been slanging and banging past 9. You know, you got to get your reps in. You're trying to get your vascular biceps bulging. And if you're knocking weights up and down, you know, it might sound a little bit like a specter.
Yeah, especially if you're just ego lifting, grunting at and whatnot.
Right. If you're dropping weights, sounding off the hunk alarm, man. Or lunk alarm, whatever it is.
I mean, who's to say too? They're not hearing these kids yelling and screaming, and then, you know, a little like knock in terms of like, you know, hey, shut up.
Your psychic mind has done it again, because that's kind of where I was leading to. It's why I wanted to confirm that their walls are attached or shared, because it is worth mentioning that some of Janet's experiences sound very much like she may have been suffering from sleep paralysis. We did a whole episode on this topic where you and Christian shared your experiences, what sleep paralysis is, how it manifests in shadow people and the Hat Man and things like that. But if she is suffering from sleep paralysis, it's possible, again, extrapolating here, that she's making noise at night and maybe somebody's simply going, hey, just quiet down. It's past hours. Or especially if the Nottinghams had kids and the parents didn't know the kids were the ones knocking. And so therefore the knocking becomes, who knows? And then the knocking became a prank and maybe just spiraled.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, people do it all the time modern day. People are too loud, just knock, knock, knock. I mean, I had an apartment not too long ago that was like multiple young toddlers living upstairs, and they would just run around like crazy. So, you know, I banged on the floor a couple times. And
I mean, it was like they lived in a bowling alley, though.
Yeah.
Your upstairs neighbor is like, hold on, let me just get a strike real quick for the neighbors.
Yeah, it was a lot.
But this could be a large part of what she experienced. In fact, very specifically, she complained that at night it felt like someone had put their hands over her mouth and nose to stop her from breathing. And when she could awake, or at least open her eyes because she wouldn't move, she would reportedly see an old man in the chair in her room. And maybe these fueled the otherwise accidentally true stories about a man named Bill, but this sleep deprivation, these terrifying experiences at night, a child doesn't know what they're experiencing. They don't know what's going on. And the people around her don't know that it is sleep paralysis at the time. And so she's got this chemical mixture of emotion, things happening, the sleep paralysis impacting her, that hoax or not, like it's a terrifying event for this girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's something real for her happening.
I would think so. And it just throws your mind into disarray.
Yeah. Now, to this day, regardless of what people believe, sisters Janet and Margaret both believe that what they experienced was a real haunting. Peggy appeared to be very scared of the poltergeist activity herself and did not make any money from telling their story. After about 1979, the major poltergeist activity seemed to stop, but the family continued to sometimes hear unexplained noises. To wrap this all up, Janet told the Daily Mail in 2015 that she and her siblings were bullied over the paranormal activity, and that, quote, "I dread going home. The front door would open, there'd be people in and out. You didn't know what to expect, and I used to worry a lot about Mom. She had a nervous breakdown in the end. I'm not one for living in the past. I want to move on. But it does come to me now and again. I dream about it, and then it affects me. I think, why did it happen to us?" End quote. And I think that sentiment is what closes this haunting, yes, maybe as something that didn't happen. Maybe, yes, a hoax or at least a fake. But regardless, what Janet and perhaps Margaret felt was very real to them, both familially, emotionally, and whatever else was going on at that time. Something was impacting them. And I think that is the real haunting of the Enfield Poltergeist.
I'm with you on that. I feel like their family was going through a lot.
Yeah.
And emotions ran wild. And it took a life of its own.
Yeah. I think that is truly what happened here. And some people maintain that belief, and I think that's admirable because I love the unknown, that this did start out as something real. Toys were flying, furniture was moving, and that everything else happening in real life was what spurred it on to take it on more of a fake era to it. But that part we'll never know. We'll never be able to separate the fact and fiction here, but it still has been a fascinating story for believers and non-believers alike. I think that's why this story will continue to live on past us. It will continue to intrigue believers and the paranormal experts. In fact, that's why it's made a movie.
Yeah,
you know?
I was about to say, it helps that there's also a movie as well.
Yeah. But as we come to a close, I just want to say, Task Force, thank you all so much for coming out, supporting us on patreon.com/redweb. Again, this is the end of the month of Scarathon. Lots of extra movie clubs this month, but that doesn't stop us. They're still coming out first and third Friday every month, as well as that discount in the store to elite members and above. You have the ad-free version of this podcast. You have bonus behind-the-scenes stuff. In fact, one of the things we put out earlier this month was Christian's own mother went to the Villisca Axe Murder's house.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, dude, some paranormal, creepy sounds that we reacted to. And honestly, that's in that realm that we had maybe answers, but we couldn't debunk it.
No, not at all. What a wild experience to be close to.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Christian, for sharing that too, by the way. I'm just like, I don't know. I keep thinking about that every now and then.
Dude, same. It was freaky.
just him going like, dude, same. I was listening to my mom listen to this and I was terrified. But yeah, Task Force, thank you all so much and have a very happy or terrifying, I don't know, whichever one, but safe Halloween. And Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.